Hey guys, tonight we're slipping quietly into fog-drenched streets of Victorian London, a place where the gaslights flicker like tired eyes, the soot clings to your clothes, and sleep? Well, sleep is an elusive luxury. You trudge through cobblestone alleys slick with mist, your footsteps echoing beneath lace-curtained windows where sleepless souls twist in their feather-stuffed beds. You catch glimpses of them, faces pale with candlelight, eyes wide, resting never quite within reach. It's the 1870s, and the city hums not with the snores of peaceful slumber, but with a mild collective panic. The word insomnia is starting to trickle through newspapers and medical pamphlets, a fashionable affliction of modern urban life. The Industrial Revolution hasn't just churned out factories and railways. It's ushered in an epidemic of midnight tossing and turning. The doctors? Oh, they have theories. Maybe it's the new gas lighting overstimulating your brain. Maybe it's the telegraph making your nerves jangle. Or maybe it's all the beef suet you had for dinner, turning in your stomach like a wet boot. Regardless of the cause, one thing is certain. Sleep is in short supply and cures, well, they're in oversupply. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake enough, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're not alone in your sleepless wandering. Victorians are grappling with the same nightly restlessness, and they don't yet have TikTok to blame. Instead, they invent a parade of peculiar remedies, most of which sound like something your eccentric great-aunt might keep in her linen cupboard. You shuffle past a newsstand where the latest edition of The Lancet suggests a fresh method for conquering sleep: boiled lettuce water. Yes, lettuce, as in the stuff under your fish. Supposedly, the milky fluid inside the stems has hypnotic properties. You try to picture it working, but you've never heard anyone rave about the sedative power of Caesar salad. As you wander further into the neighborhood of Bloomsbury, a light drizzle begins. You pass a row of townhouses where the gas lamps cast long, sleepy shadows. In one parlor window, a man in a dressing gown sips from a steaming mug. His mother swears it's poppy seed tea with a dash of treacle. He swears it tastes like hot compost and hasn't helped one bit, but he drinks it nightly out of loyalty and hope. Back then, sleeplessness wasn't just irritating, it was vaguely shameful. Doctors called it a nervous complaint. Especially common among the educated classes, women with sensitive constitutions, and clergymen. They said it indicated weak moral fiber, or too much reading after dark. Historians still argue whether insomnia was truly more common in the Victorian era or whether people simply talk about it more, now that urbanization had consolidated millions of stressed-out people into one blinking, breathing metropolis. Either way, it led to an entire sleep industry. From specialist clinics to moonlight lectures title things like the moral hygiene of sleep. You pause by a tiny storefront with a hanging sign shaped like a teacup. It reads, Dr. Penrose's Nocturnal Remedies, open all hours. Inside, the shelves are lined with amber glass bottles, each with faded handwritten labels. Night drops, soothing elixir, and something called restful syrup of the brain. The air smells like cloves, licorice, and a hint of mothballs. Dr. Penrose himself appears from behind a curtain. He's in his 60s, with round spectacles and wild eyebrows that seem to defy gravity. He speaks softly, like someone who doesn't want to wake the furniture. He tells you that true sleep comes not from the body, but from the volitional disengagement of the mind. Then he tries to sell you a foot bath made of zinc and thistle oil. You decline politely and return to the street. Above you, chimneys puff. Somewhere, a steam engine groans as it arrives at the station. Everything in the city seems designed to be loud, bustling, and brightly lit. All things you now associate with being very much awake. Victorians are just starting to recognize this paradox. Their proudest achievements, railroads, electric lights, late-night culture, are also what's keeping them from their dreams. You keep walking. A woman hurries past you, clutching a vial in her gloved hand. She's heading home from one of London's many homeopaths, perhaps carrying a tincture made of crushed pearl or diluted foxglove, which her cousin swears works. It doesn't, but it makes her feel like she's trying. In truth, The most reliable cure at the time is something no one wants to admit: sheer exhaustion. Many Victorians sleep poorly not because they're too stimulated, but because they're too poor. In the slums of Whitechapel, whole families share a mattress. The concept of insomnia there is laughable. If you're tired enough, sleep finds you. But in the more refined drawing rooms of Kensington and Mayfair, rest becomes elusive, perhaps because it's optional. You pause again, this time at a narrow alley where a gaslight flickers overhead. You lean against a wrought iron fence, the damp chill seeping through your sleeves. You feel the quiet weight of history pressing in, a city restless, searching, sipping lettuce broth and sniffing lavender satchels, all in the hope of one good night's sleep. You close your eyes for a moment, listening to the soft shuffle of boots on cobblestones, the far-off clatter of a carriage, and the wind sighing between chimneys. If the Victorians could sleep through this, maybe you can too. You wake. Well, not really awake, just still somehow awake, and shuffle along a sleepy mews where gaslight puddles around your feet like melted butter. Ahead, you spot a wiry man with a lantern and an enormous mustache pushing peculiar cart. He whistles softly, stopping every few doors. As he sets down bottles by each doorstep, you realize this is the Midnight Milkman. He isn't just delivering any milk. This is fortified milk. Some bottles contain nutmeg-infused blends. Others are steeped with nerve tonic, which may or may not include a whisper of laudanum. There's even a rumor that one especially wealthy household orders milk laced with crushed pearl and saffron. Sleep for them is apparently supposed to sparkle. You watch him tuck a cookie, yes, a cookie, next to one bottle. Oat and lavender, they say. Or sometimes oat and opium. Depends on your baker. These late-night snacks are advertised in whispery ads as mildly drousifying. That's Victorian for you might nap through a fire. The milkman catches your eye and tips his cap. Better than counting sheep in it, he murmurs, disappearing into the mist. Inside one home, you see a gentleman in his robe, sniffing the milk like it might bite. He dips his pinky, takes a dainty sip, then climbs into a bed the size of a rowing boat. His maid winds the alarm clock, a monster brass gears, and places a warm brick at his feet. This is his third attempt at sleep tonight, so far. The lavender milk, the foot bath, and even a brief stare to Fern haven't helped. Historians still argue whether the Victorian obsession with milk at bedtime had true medicinal roots or was just a lingering superstition from rural folk practices. Either way, the warm milk cure crosses classes. From duchesses to chimney sweeps, everyone sips their way toward oblivion. You pass a corner shop window, glowing faintly in the fog. Inside, a cluttered display of bottles, powders, and hand-labeled sweets boasts all sorts of curious confections. One candy is called Dr. Slumber's Bliss Bits. The ingredients? Honey, valerian, and an alarming amount of morphine. You don't go in. You've read enough to know Victorian dosage suggestions are more like polite guesses. Instead, you continue down the lane toward a small park, drawn by the rhythmic clinking of glass. Beneath an ancient elm, two women in shawls are trading bedtime recipes like gossip. One claims that fennel tea with a twist of orange peel knocks you flat. The other swears by a cube of sugar soaked in rum, and something she only refers to as grandmother's friend. No one asks what's in grandmother's friend. As you listen, your eyes drift to a pile of folded newspapers beside the bench. The headline reads, "The Curse of Modernity, Sleeplessness in the City." The article suggests that the human brain was never meant to live under electric light, nor endure the stress of telegrams and rail timetables. It recommends a return to natural rhythms, specifically 2 short sleeps per night, with a brief wakeful vigil in between. Yes, that was a real thing, the biphasic sleep pattern. Some Victorians believed you were supposed to wake up for an hour or two around 1 a.m. to read, pray, or take a short stroll. Only after that could you return to bed and drift off again. In that light, maybe your modern sleeplessness isn't a curse. It's just vintage, still restless. You leave the park and make your way toward a narrow alley where you've heard rumors of a woman who sells dream pillows. You find her beneath a tattered umbrella, perched beside a basket of embroidered sachets. Each one is stuffed with a mix of herbs, chamomile, hops, rosemary, and sewn with tiny charms. Moon, stars, sometimes a sleepy fox. She presses one into your hand and says, "Breathe it in, close your eyes. Think of clouds." You do, and to your surprise, it smells comforting, like sun-warm hay and something just a bit like lemon cake. Victorian dream pillows were common gifts between friends and lovers. Some were even stitched with small poems or blessings. Lay down thy thoughts, and let night's tide carry thee to calmer shores. A nice sentiment, even if the calmer shores sometimes turn out to be unconsciousness by ether overdose. At the end of the alley, you find a bench and sit. Across the way, a group of delivery boys are finishing their shift, passing around a tiny flask of something that smells like peppermint and regret. They call it Sleepy Sip. It's probably just gin with a drop of clove, but they swear it works. You lean back, your head against cool stone, and gaze at the glowing windows overhead. In this city, no one seems to sleep all night. There's always someone baking, someone whispering, someone brewing one last cup. And as you close your eyes for just a moment, the fog wraps around you like a velvet curtain. You hear the soft splash of milk bottles, the clink of teaspoons, and a lullaby hum by someone 3 floors up, off-key but heartfelt. You won't remember the tune, but it will follow you into the next stretch of this strange, sleepy journey. The street narrows. Chimneys loom like sentinels above your head. And somewhere in the near distance, a grandfather clock lets out a reluctant chime. 1 o'clock, the hour when most of London has either given up on sleep or is reaching for something slightly experimental. You pause in front of a tall, unassuming boarding house. The brass plaque outside reads, "Rooms and Restoratives. Quiet lodgings for the wearily inclined." Inside, a ticking fills the air, not from clocks, but from machines. You step quietly into the dim hallway. The wallpaper is faded, the gaslight low, and there's a faint hum coming from upstairs. You climb the creaky staircase and peek into the first room on the left. There, in the middle of a sparse chamber, a man lies in bed with an odd contraption attached to the frame, a mechanical bed shaker. It's a sort of crank-powered gadget, a cross between a music box and a tiny earthquake generator. Every 30 seconds, it jolts the mattress ever so slightly, just enough to nudge you deeper into sleep. Allegedly, the man doesn't seem convinced. He's gripping the bed frame like a sailor in a storm and muttering something about well-meant lunacy. Victorian inventors were endlessly creative when it came to sleep aids. Some insisted gentle vibrations helped lull the agitated brain. Others believed the movement simulated the sway of a baby's cradle, though this particular model seems better suited to scramble eggs than soothe minds. In another room, a woman has strapped small bells to her feet. They chime faintly as she stretches and rolls from side to side. A pamphlet beside her claims that rhythmic motion and oral harmonics could coax the nervous system into restful alignment. Historians still argue whether this was based on any science, or simply a desperate attempt to make yoga fashionable before yoga existed. You wander down the hall, where you find a door labeled Dr. Tilling's Patent Rest Chamber. Inside is a velvet curtain space outfitted with what looks like a dentist chair crossed with a chaise lounge. A man is being oscillated, gently bounced on a hydraulic pad while breathing through a linen cone soaked in bergamot. Dr. Tilling, a pale man with pince-nez and a voice like porridge, explains that his treatment resets the vestibular compass. You nod politely, pretend to understand. Meanwhile, the poor client in the chair looks slightly green. There's even a room devoted to timed lighting. A curious blend of science and stagecraft. The room mimics sunset with dimming gaslight. A rotating lantern casts slow-moving shadows across the ceiling. Clouds, trees, and once a very drowsy-looking lion. You lie down on a bench and watch. It almost works until the shadow lion eats a cloud and ruins the illusion. A gentleman next to you mutters, "It's just too stimulating, don't you think?" As if he expected a better class of dream theater. You leave the boarding house before someone offers to dunk you in a cold plunge. Back on the street, you pass another sort of rest cure, a horse-drawn cart with painted signage reading, "The Sleeping Van." Inside, weary souls pay a penny for a short nap in straw-lined compartments. It's part public transport, part public nap chamber. Think Uber pool meets hay bale. Most users don't seem to mind the rough accommodations. After all, when your boarding house walls are paper thin and your neighbor snores like a thunderstorm in boots, the back of a cart feels like luxury. As you pass, the van's driver sings softly, a folk tune meant to calm passengers. It works on you more than the jostling bed did. Further down the road, a woman in a blue bonnet offers you a flyer for something called the Somnambulist Society. She explains in hushed tones that they meet weekly to discuss dreams, sleepwalking tales, and the deeper meanings of insomnia. Their latest topic? Whether people can train themselves to dream in French. You nod solemnly, and she gives you a candied violet with your flyer. Victorian London wasn't short on sleep theories. Some medical journals claimed that dreamless sleep was the healthiest. Others insisted that dreams cleanse the mind like a psychic sponge. Still others argued that dream control was possible and might even cure madness. Historians still debate the extent to which these beliefs influence medical practice versus just social fads. But one thing's certain. If someone in the 1870s said they had mastered the art of sleeping, they were either a monk, a charlatan, or very, very tired. By now, the city is quieter. The fog has settled into a soft hush, like someone gently laying a blanket across your shoulders. You pause at a tiny green square where a statue of Queen Victoria looks permanently unimpressed. A cat slinks by, utterly at peace. A man in a long coat sits on the bench beside you. He's reading the Times by moonlight and chewing licorice root. Settles the nerves, he explains, and keeps the jaw busy. Then he hands you a stick. You try it. It tastes like dusty syrup and optimism. Still, he might be onto something. Before you part ways, he shares one last remedy, passed down from his grandmother. Sleep comes faster when you press your feet against a cold tile floor for exactly 90 seconds, then climb into a warm bed. It's oddly specific. You make a mental note. As you stand, the city clock strikes 2. Somewhere, a dog barks once. A carriage clatters faintly in the distance. And you, still not quite asleep, drift onward, gently jostled by Victorian ingenuity and a sense that, perhaps, the search for sleep is the most human struggle of all. You round a corner and suddenly find yourself bathed in the comforting, woody scent of herbs. A single oil lamp glows in the window of a narrow shop nestled between a butcher and a bookseller. The sign above reads, H. Larkspur, herbalist, quieting the mind since 1819. You push open the creaky door, and a little bell chimes overhead, soft, like it's trying not to wake anyone. The shop is dim and packed floor to ceiling with jars, bundles, and dusty labels in elaborate script. A calico cat sleeps on the counter beside a handwritten guide titled For Those Who Lie Awake After Midnight. You flip it open and read. Valerian root. Strong, earthy, slightly suspicious smelling. Good for nerves and nightmares. May cause vivid dreams about talking birds. Mugwort. Enhances dream clarity. Allegedly. Smells like forgotten church incense. Chamomile. Pleasant. Tastes like slightly judgmental flowers. Boiled cabbage water. Less effective. More emotional damage. Behind the counter appears the shop's owner, a woman with silver hair piled high and spectacles on a chain. She greets you with a voice like a lullaby. You're here for rest, dear? Aren't we all? You nod, taking the clutter of mortars and pestles, sachets stuffed with lavender, and tinctures labeled things like slumber oil and dream draft. She offers you a small vial and invites you to smell it. The aroma is warm and spicy, clove, lemon balm, and something oddly like baked apples. You ask about the cabbage water. She smiles. Ah, yes, a last resort, best used as a threat. Herbal cures were wildly popular in Victorian London, often passed from mother to daughter, or whispered over fences between neighbors. While formal medicine leaned toward dangerous concoctions, the working class and many women preferred the safety and affordability of plants. Historians still debate how effective these remedies truly were. Some argue the benefits were mostly placebo. Others suggest the act of preparing them. The steeping, the measuring, the ritual was calming in itself. One thing's for certain. People return to herbalists again and again, hoping for that elusive full night's sleep. You let the herbalist pack you a sachet. She tucks in a dried sprig of lemon verbena for joy and murmurs a sleepy blessing over it. You slip it into your pocket, and it instantly makes your coat smell like a midsummer meadow. As you exit the shop, you catch a glimpse of a group gathered on the opposite corner, seated on crates and mismatched stools. They're passing around steaming cups from a large tin kettle. One man pours you a mug with a wink. "Sleep tea," he says. "Made myself." You raise an eyebrow. "What's in it?" "Oh, you know," he shrugs. "A little peppermint, some fennel, pinch of hops, and some folks say there's beetroot for courage." He grins. "But I just like the color. It's surprisingly tasty, earthy, a little spicy, and you think you might feel your shoulders drop for the first time tonight." In the Victorian era, there were entire tea salons dedicated to the sleepless class, those who roamed the city long past midnight. These establishments often blended social therapy with herbal concoctions, a place to chat, to sit in warm light, and to feel seen. You sip slowly, listening to the group's gentle chatter. One woman insists she dreamed of Queen Victoria dancing. Another swears that if you put rosemary under your pillow, you'll dream of your future spouse. "Worked for me," she adds, though he never did grow into his teeth. The others laugh, and you find yourself smiling too. Suddenly, from around the corner, a boy dashes up and hands the group a printed pamphlet titled The Insomniac's Companion. It's a tiny zine, really, complete with tips, illustrations, and a poem. "When gaslight burns and slumber hides. Steep thyme in sage, and close your eyes. Let lavender breeze and chamomile sigh float you gently through moonlit skies." You pocket the pamphlet. Someone should have told your high school chemistry teacher that sleep poetry was as effective. The group begins to disperse, with soft goodnights and muffled yawns. One by one, they vanish into fog, heading back toward whatever beds await them, be they brass-framed, lumpy, or stuffed with questionable straw. You continue on, past a row of homes where open windows release clouds of scent, mint, ginger, rosewater, and the unmistakable tang of vinegar. Someone, somewhere, is attempting a traditional sleep poultice, possibly involving onions. You sincerely hope it's not meant to go on the pillow. You turn down a quieter lane, and suddenly the city feels muffled, wrapped in velvet. The occasional cat darts across your path. The gaslights seem dimmer. Or maybe you're just starting to feel still. A gentle breeze picks up. It smells like bakeries. Somewhere not far off, a fresh batch of bread is being pulled from the oven. Another strange comfort, warm and simple. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the scent wrap around you. You're not asleep yet, but your limbs are slower. You're breathing deeper. You're drifting. And just as you're about to sit on a stoop and close your eyes for real, a nearby door creaks open. A young man steps out in a rumpled waistcoat, rubbing his eyes. "Couldn't sleep?" he asks. You shake your head. He smiles. "Try rosemary in your socks," he says, completely serious. "Worked for my cousin." Mind you, he was odd to begin with. He disappears down the alley, and you're left alone, the sachet in your pocket warm from your hand. Your cup still steaming faintly in the cold. You stroll slowly now, each step softer than the last. A light rain begins to patter on the rooftops, just enough to add a rhythm to your wandering. You pull your coat tighter and turn onto a street lit by the flickering glow of lanterns behind foggy glass. There's something almost musical in the way the droplets hit the cobblestones, each plink a sleepy metronome. Ahead, a painted sign creaks in the wind. The Hydropathic Institute for the Restoratively Inclined. The words are embellished with twining ivy, a crescent moon, and what appears to be a naked cherub holding a sponge. Very tasteful. You step inside, and it smells exactly like what you'd expect. Damp towels, rosemary oil, and the unmistakable perfume of someone trying very hard to hide mildew. A matron in a high-collar blouse greets you and motions toward a row of private tin bathtubs, each one looking vaguely like a soup tureen. Hydrotherapy, you're told, is all the rage. The Victorians believe that a warm soak can dissolve worry molecules, which sounds made up because it is. Still, there's no denying that the bath is cozy. You lower yourself into the shallow water. Someone's added eucalyptus leaves and maybe a hint of pepper. Either that, or your sinuses are hallucinating. On the adjacent shelf sits a tin bell. The matron explains that you're to ring it precisely once when you feel your soul is sufficiently softened. You ask how you'll know. She just smiles and whispers, "You'll know." Victorian hydrotherapy is as much about ritual as it is about water. Some sleep seekers swear by the alternate plunge method. Hot bath, then cold sponge to the spine, then bed. Others favor the drizzle wrap, where you're swaddled in damp sheets and left to stew like a human dumpling. The theory is that the body's shock will force it into a state of calm. It's not clear if it works, or just stuns you into surrender. Historians still argue whether these water treatments provided measurable benefit or simply offered a rare excuse for stillness in a bustling city. Either way, it was widely accepted that if you couldn't sleep, the answer might be somewhere between tepid water and very polite drowning. Just when you're starting to relax, a nearby door opens with a hiss of candlelight, and a nurse glides past carrying a small wooden box labeled Electro Sleep Inducement Kit. She explains, without breaking her soothing whisper, that it's not what it sounds like. Only mild current, she assures you, applied behind the ears or to the elbows. Some gentlemen find it quite refreshing. You decline, opting instead to remain quietly submerged, imagining the water drawing out your restlessness like ink from a blotting page. Eventually, you climb out, towel off, and don a borrowed robe that smells faintly of rosemary and chalk. You're ushered into a softly lit lounge, where a woman in a shawl is lecturing a group of attendees on the virtues of B-venom. Yes, B-venom. Nothing, she insists, calms the nervous system like a properly administered sting. She gestures to her forearm, which is gently pink and slightly swollen. 5 minutes of discomfort, followed by hours of serenity. A man in the front row leans forward eagerly, asking if he can double the dose. The woman raises an eyebrow. You may wish to try a foot sting first. You edge away from the bee enthusiast and settle into a wicker chair by the fire. A plate of biscuits appears beside you, lemon, oat, and something that smells herbal but tastes mostly like pencil shavings. You eat one anyway. You're not sure if it's doing anything for your sleep, but it's very committed to the role. As you sit by the fire, staring into the low flames, your mind begins to wander. The heat is gentle, not blazing. The crackling embers sound almost like soft rain on dry leaves. Someone beside you begins to hum. Slow, almost tuneless, but familiar in a way you can't quite place. A nurse reappears and offers you a dab of ointment for the temples. You accept. It smells like lavender, and menthol had a philosophical disagreement. As she applies it, she tells you stories of patients who claim to sleepwalk into other people's dreams, of one gentleman who swore he could only fall asleep if he heard the sound of quill pens scratching on parchment. Odd man, she says fondly. We eventually just paid someone to write grocery lists beside his bed. Victorian remedies straddle the line between science and theater. Practitioners didn't just offer treatment. They offer hope wrapped in ritual. Whether it was a bath, a sting, or a biscuit, each cure carried with a soft suggestion. You can sleep. You're meant to sleep. Maybe not now, maybe not tonight, but soon. Outside, the rain continues steady and soothing. You stand and thank the matron, who blesses your journey with a theatrical nod. You step back into the street, skin slightly warm, smelling like a sleepy herb garden. You walk slower now, the fog mingling with steam rising from the warm stones. Around you, shutters close, candles flicker out. The city is easing itself into slumber, not all at once, but gently, like a cat curling around itself. You stop at the corner and glance back at the Hydropathic Institute. The cherub on the sign seems to wink at you. You take a breath. You stretch your hands. And you step softly into the next quiet corner of this wandering night. You make your way deeper into the city's shadows, where the air thickens with damp soot and a whisper of something sweet. Maybe roses, maybe old book bindings. The street opens slightly, revealing a narrow brick building with a bold, painted sign, Maison Hypnos, mesmeric services for the sleep-deprived gentle person. You step through the door into a plush, velvet-draped parlor. The scent is unmistakable, lavender, polished wood, and just a trace of citrus. A woman in soft gray silk greets you with a faint, dreamy smile. The doctor will be with you shortly, she says, as though you've come for tea and not a possible mental rewiring. Victorians had a peculiar relationship with hypnosis, though they preferred the term mesmerism. Inspired by Franz Mesmer's theories of animal magnetism, practitioners claimed they could guide patients into a tranquil, suggestible state using only gentle speech and purposeful hand movements. Sleep, they insisted, lay just on the other side of focus. You're ushered into a small chamber lit only by candles, where an impossibly tall man stands waiting. His coat is dark velvet, his beard gently forked, and his French accent suspiciously theatrical. He introduces himself as Dr. Auguste Moreau, though you're fairly sure that's not his real name. He motions for you to recline on a chaise longue beside a softly bubbling fountain. Close your eyes, he intones, drawing his hand slowly through the air like he's parting invisible curtains. We begin. You do as instructed. His voice becomes the room's only anchor, low, slow, repetitive. He counts backward from 10, then begins murmuring gentle phrases. You are floating. You are a feather. You are drifting down, down. After several minutes, he informs you, in a tone of deep satisfaction, that you are now entranced. You feel precisely the same, perhaps more aware of your right foot than you were before, but you nod politely. He continues, whispering curious phrases into the dark. Your eyelids are heavy. Your thoughts are like paper boats. You have never heard of taxes. You nearly laugh, but oddly, something does start to shift. Your breathing slows. Your mind begins to quiet, not entirely from his words, but from the way they leave no room for your own. Historians still debate whether Victorian hypnotists were more stage performer than healer. Many capitalize on their clients' desperation, blending showmanship with earnest suggestion. But a few, particularly those working alongside physicians, pioneered techniques surprisingly similar to modern guided meditation. Moreau snaps his fingers suddenly. You are returned, he declares. You blink. A bit startled. Did you nod off? Maybe not. He hands you a tiny bottle labeled Essence of Slumber. It smells of orange blossoms and faintly mothballs. Place 2 drops on your pillow, he instructs, and dream only of favorable things. You thank him and step out into the fog again. The contrast between the warm, still parlor and the cool, midnight air is refreshing. Your senses feel slightly dulled, like a radio tune just between 2 stations. Further down the road, you pass a small bookstore still lit inside. Curious, you duck in. It's a treasure trove, leather-bound tomes, scrolls of curling maps, and shelves labeled Dream Studies, Nighttime Vapors, and Practical Sleep by Gentle Means. You skim titles, Slumber Without Sin, The Candle and the Nervous System, and the oddly popular Why Cheese at Night is Dangerous. A bespectacled clerk appears, ghost-like. Looking for something restful? He whispers, clearly without irony. He recommends the art of moonlight drowsing, a slim volume containing such advice as, stare gently at the ceiling until it forgets you are watching. You're not sure if it's medical guidance or surrealist poetry, but it's oddly soothing. Before leaving, you glance at the counter and notice a bowl of what appear to be lozenges. They're labeled slumber pearls. Ingredients: sugar, starch, and a tincture of the moon. You take 1 just in case. Back outside, the city feels even quieter. You wander past closed haberdasheries, shuttered cafes, and a stone fountain draped in ivy. You catch a whiff of honeysuckle. Though you're not near a garden, the fog plays tricks. You stop briefly to rest on a bench beneath a wrought iron street lamp. Your limbs feel heavier. The warmth of the mesmerist parlor lingers in your chest. Your fingers curl around the small bottle in your pocket. Its glass warm from your hand. From somewhere above, a piano note drifts down, a single chord lazily struck. You imagine a sleepless pianist, padding barefoot across the floor, playing only to calm themselves. Or maybe just to say, I'm here too. A man with a wide-brimmed hat strolls past. He tips it in greeting, revealing bloodshot eyes and a knowing smile. Too many thoughts? He asks. You nod. He hands you a folded scrap of paper before disappearing into the mist. It reads, sleep is not a command. It is a visitor. Set the table. Leave the door ajar. You tuck the note away. It's probably the best advice you've gotten all night. The fog thickens around you like a second coat. Your feet move on instinct now, one after the other, your thoughts slower, softer. You still haven't slept, but maybe you're sleep adjacent now. The borderland where daydreams begin to elbow in. One more turn, one more block. The city isn't asleep, but it's resting. And you're getting close. The streets slope downward now, taking you toward a quieter part of the city, where the lamps flicker lazily and the houses lean into one another like old friends sharing secrets. The fog has softened everything. The corners, the rooftops, even your own footsteps. They don't echo anymore. They just land. You pass a gated garden with iron scrollwork and low hedges, and beyond it, a row of middle-class homes with neatly shuttered windows. You're drawn to the one with a faint glow behind lace curtains and the unmistakable smell of paint. A small sign hangs on the gatepost. Soporific homewares and domestic tonics, Mrs. Petherbridge and Daughters. The door is ajar. Inside, the parlor is a riot of textures. Lace and velvet, fringe and tassels, embroidered tea cozies and thick carpeting that eat your footsteps like sponge cake. You're greeted by a trio of women, all in coordinated shades of mauve. They wave you toward a wing-back chair and place a warm cushion behind your head before you can protest. "Welcome, dear," says Mrs. Petherbridge, pressing a cup of thin, milky tea into your hand. "We were just discussing the benefits of soporific aesthetics." She gestures to the wallpaper, a delicate lavender print that looks like clouds caught mid-yawn. "Form and function," she adds. "Your walls should want you to sleep." And she means that literally. Victorian domestic culture was fascinated by the idea that beauty could influence health, and nowhere more so than in the realm of sleep. There were pillows filled with down and dried poppies, curtains that filtered moonlight just so, and wallpapers infused with herbs or scented waxes that released soothing aromas as the room warmed overnight. Lavender-scented borders. One daughter says proudly, "Patent pending." Historians still debate whether these sleep aesthetic innovations had any measurable effect, or simply gave insomniacs something hopeful to fuss over. Either way, a sleepless Victorian home could easily become a soft battlefield of design experiments. You're shown to a small bedroom at the back of the house, where a delicate lace canopy sways above the bed, and something strange glimmers faintly in the wallpaper's floral print. You lean closer and realize the design has been painted using a wash that includes powdered lead. One of the daughters notices your hesitation. "Oh, yes, it's very mildly toxic," she says reassuringly. "It slows the thoughts." You nod with a tight smile and step carefully back into the hallway. Next, you're ushered into the pillow room, a cozy closet with shelves stacked floor to ceiling with hand-labeled cushions. Each one is stitched with different fabric, filled with odd combinations of ingredients, and given a quaint name. The Gentleman's Resignation, Maiden's Afternoon, Dream of Quiet Fields. You pick one at random. Evening Humility. It smells of cloves and possibly talcum powder. Mrs. Petherbridge insists you lie down, just to feel it. You do, and to your surprise, it is rather nice. She explains that the right pillow firmness can make or break a night's sleep. Too soft, and you drift into anxious dreams. Too firm, and you wake every hour thinking you're being interrogated by your mattress. The Victorians experimented with everything: goose feathers, horsehair, wool, pine shavings, and even dried seaweed, which, according to one theory, align the humors. You test another pillow labeled Monarch's Mercy. It's heavier, smells of cedar, and makes your ear feel oddly regal. One of the daughters brings out a demonstration item, the soporific quilt. Each square is hand-stitched and scented differently. Lavender in the corners, chamomile in the center, and valerian root near your feet. You imagine someone trying to sleep while mapping their way around this aromatic patchwork, like a quilted treasure hunt. Relaxing in theory. And then there's the sleep cabinet. It's built into the wall. Oak, about the size of a small wardrobe, and lined with glass jars, each filled with a different powder, salve, or syrup. A small brass plaque reads, "For the restless. Administer sparingly." You peer at a few. One contains powdered sugar and grated nutmeg. Another something oily and dark green. There's a syrup labeled Whispers and a small tin marked Emergency Slumber, highly effective on accountants. The last jar is unmarked, but the daughter smiles and says, "That's just mashed pears, for emergencies of a different sort." You politely decline all offers of tasting and return to the parlor, where the women are now embroidering a sampler that reads, "Let no wakeful thought cross this threshold." You thank them for their hospitality and step back outside. The air is cooler now, the fog thinner. You're wrapped in the scent of stitched herbs, soft wool, and questionable wall treatments. You feel heavier, like your limbs are coated in calm. Not sleepy exactly, but softened as you walk away. You pass a woman through her window, carefully fluffing a pillow and placing a sprig of rosemary inside. She folds back the blanket, pours a thimbleful of cordial, and draws the curtain. Her movements are deliberate, ritualistic. Sleep is not guaranteed, but invited every single night. You keep walking, your own feet slow it without your say-so. Maybe it's the tea, maybe it's the wallpaper fumes. But the city feels closer now, folded in on itself. And you, floating gently along its quiet folds. Your path curves toward a brighter part of the city, bright in the Victorian sense, which means the gas lamps are mostly lit and at least half the horses are walking in a straight line. You find yourself beneath the arched windows of a public house. Its hanging sign swings lazily in the mist. The Restless Scholar. A chalkboard below reads, "Tonight's topic. Is sleeplessness a sign of genius?" Curiosity wins, as always. Inside, the room is warm and buzzing, not loudly, but with the low murmur of people thinking out loud. The space is part salon, part study, and part haphazard furniture emporium. Patrons sit in armchairs that don't match, surrounded by book piles, slippers, and the occasional pipe smoke cloud curling through the air like a slow question mark. You find an empty spot on a chaise next to a man with thick spectacles and a surprising number of pencils in his jacket pocket. He smiles and offers you a biscuit from a tin labeled digestive, cinnamon enhanced. You take one. It tastes like good intentions and chalk. A woman in an embroidered shawl stands near the fireplace, speaking with slow authority. "Gentlefolk," she begins, "we are here tonight to debate whether the inability to sleep is truly an affliction or a mark of elevated thought." This gets a soft chorus of hymns and polite throat clears. "Some," she continues, "say that Shakespeare, Darwin, and Florence Nightingale all reported long, wakeful hours, perfectly productive ones. Victorians loved this theory. The notion that insomnia meant you were simply too brilliant to rest comfortably, that your mind required more hours to process its genius, that you were, essentially, doing night wrong in the most sophisticated way possible. Historians still argue whether this belief encouraged actual creativity or simply gave a soothing excuse to tired, anxious people staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. A man at the back raises his hand. "What if I'm just awake because I'm haunted by unpaid bills?" The group chuckles. The speaker nods. "Then you, sir, are economically philosophical." There's a brief pause to pass around hot lemon water, which has been steeped with something herbal and vaguely mysterious. One gentleman claims it contains foxglove. His neighbor gently informs him that's a heart medicine, and he goes pale. Everyone pretends not to notice. You sip carefully. It tastes like lemon with a stern opinion. Across the room, a scholar leafs through a book titled The Nocturnal Mind, Essays on Midnight Reasoning. He reads aloud a passage. "Sleep is a betrayal of waking clarity. Why abandon your most lucid hours?" You glance around the room. These people aren't cured of sleeplessness. They're rebranding it, turning it into a virtue. A secret society of the quietly vibrating. Another woman speaks. "I find I do my best sewing at 2 in the morning. The silence holds the fabric better." There are nods all around. A young man adds, "I wrote 4 poems and half a novel between midnight and dawn. Unfortunately, I was also hallucinating a bit." You catch yourself smiling. This room is a soft rebellion against the idea that sleep is always good and necessary. Here, it's acknowledged but not mandatory. Someone proposes a toast. "To the unquiet mind, may it one day rest, but not too soon." The room chuckles again. Glasses are raised. You sip your water like it's champagne. As the group begins to disperse, the host invites guests to take a pamphlet on their way out. It's titled Night Thoughts and Other Acceptable Occupations. You pocket one, already imagining the chapters, staring gently out the window, reorganizing button drawers, composing stern letters you'll never send. Back outside, the night is cooler, calmer. The fog has lifted slightly, and the moon is showing off in a gap between chimneys. Your breath rises in little clouds, slow and rhythmic. You head down a quieter street now, your ears still full of thoughtful voices, your limbs weighed down with that delicious kind of fatigue that doesn't demand sleep, but allows it to arrive gently. Ahead, you see a shop window lit from within, and through it, a row of cushions embroidered with Latin phrases and moons. The sign simply says philosophical betting. You make a note of it in your mind, unsure whether you're mocking it or planning to shop there later. A little further along, you pass a narrow alley where someone has written in chalk on the bricks. The dreams of the wise require no pillow. You add a question mark in your head. Maybe, maybe not. You pause beside a lamppost and press your back against the cool iron. Your shoulders relax. Your feet are grateful. The voices from the salon linger, weaving themselves into the night air. And in the hush, a new thought drifts in. Not loud, not urgent, just present. Maybe tonight, sleep isn't something you win. Maybe it's just something you approach, one quiet step at a time. You take another. You cross a narrow footbridge arching gently over a canal, the water beneath black as ink and smooth as glass. There's a quiet here that feels deliberate. The only sounds are the creak of the boards beneath your feet, the occasional lapping of water, and your own breath slowing just a little more with each step. And then, faintly, you catch the whiff of something sharp, medicinal, not the pleasant herb-laced sweetness of earlier remedies, but something more metallic, more surgical. You follow the scent to a modest building tucked between two warehouses, its windows shuttered, but the door propped open with a brick. A sign above the entrance reads, H. Whitby, Surgeon, consultation and general remedies offer at all hours. Inside, you find a surprisingly clean waiting room, though dimly lit. The wallpaper is pale blue, the chair stiff-backed, and the only sound is a quiet ticking of a clock you can't see. A nurse, pale and precise, nods you toward a door marked Sleep Interventions. Patients welcome. You go in. The room is lined with wooden cabinets, each labeled with care. Bottles sit on silver trays, and in the center of the room stands a curious metal stand holding a funnel-shaped mask and a stopper jar. Dr. Whitby appears with the calm, too-even smile of someone who slept exactly 7 hours every night for the past decade. He motioned for you to sit. You're tired, he says. It's not a question. You nod. He uncorks a jar, and a sweet, sickly scent floats into the air, soft, floral, and undeniably chemical. Chloroform. Whitby explains in a near whisper that controlled doses of chloroform or ether were once believed to invite slumber swiftly and safely, especially in the most stubborn cases. A blessing for the sleepless, he calls it, when applied with care. You ask if it's safe. He tilts his head. When applied with great care, it usually is. Victorians turned anesthetics for sleep with both hope and trepidation. These substances, originally developed for surgery, slowly found their way into home remedies. Even Queen Victoria was administered chloroform during childbirth. It was, in the popular mind, a kind of miracle mist, a shortcut to oblivion. Historians still argue whether the wide, unofficial use of chloroform for sleep was a result of desperation or blind trust in science's newest toys. Some believed it reset the nerves. Others saw it as a decadent luxury for the idle upper class. A few simply called it sleep in a bottle. Whitby offers a cloth. You hesitate. He nods understandingly. We also have laudanum, he adds. You glance at a nearby bottle. Its handwritten label faded. Laudanum, an opium-based tincture, was as common in Victorian nightstands as socks. People dosed it into tea, into wine, onto sugar cubes, and sometimes directly onto their pillows. There were laudanum tonics for infants, for cats, probably for houseplants, if you asked the right shop. You decline the bottle and the mask. Politely, Whitby doesn't seem offended. Instead, he produces a notebook and opens it to a page labeled Unmedicated Methods. You skim the entries, oiled silk nightcaps, counting backwards in foreign tongues, humming low notes while lying upside down. You smile. It's nice to be offered something you won't regret in the morning. Before you leave, he hands you a small satchel. Chamomile and orange rind, he says, and a pinch of crushed clove. Much gentler. Back on the street. The air is a little clearer now. The fog has lifted just enough for you to see a row of lampposts fading into the distance, one after the next like sleepy sentinels. As you walk, you pass a man sitting on a stoop with a bottle balanced on his knee. He tips it at you and says, "Doctor gave me this. Said it would knock out a horse. Didn't touch me." He yawns long and slow. "I think it's the worrying," he continues. "My head doesn't stop when it should. Just keeps rearranging furniture in there." You nod. You understand. Everyone's mind has its own strange way of rearranging furniture at 2 a.m. Some nights the couch stays still. Other nights, it ends up in the attic with all your regrets and unpaid bills. The man offers you a slug of his tonic. You decline. He shrugs and mutters something about trying warm ale next. Further on, you pass a row of chemists. Most are closed, their windows dark. But one glows faintly behind frost-rimmed glass. Inside, a solitary clerk reads under a single lamp, surrounded by jars and flasks and books with titles like The Nervous Gentleman's Sleep Regimen and Slumber Without Sin, a treatise on tonic abstinence. You don't go in. You don't need to. You've already gathered every potion, powder, and poem the night has to offer. And still, sleep hasn't fully arrived. But something else has. You feel slower now. Not sluggish, just suspended. Your thoughts don't chase each other anymore. They stretch. Yawn. Settle. You pause at a fountain. Its trickle barely audible over the hush of the street. You sit on its edge and take out the little satchel Whitby gave you. You breathe it in orange clove and something earthy and grounding. It smells like closing time at a very peaceful apothecary. And for a moment, with the scent in your lungs and the city hushed all around you, you think, this could be it. This could be the turning point. Maybe. You don't try to force it. Instead, you let your breath match the rhythm of the water, the night, the distant footsteps of other wanderers, and you wait. The street curves gently to the right, and you follow without question. At this point, your journey isn't about getting somewhere. It's about being somewhere. Being here. In this night. In this fog. In this curious half-state between awareness and surrender. The buildings shift again. Brick gives way to stone, and suddenly you're standing outside a mahogany double door with brass handles polished to a sleepy gleam. There's no sign, but there doesn't need to be. You know this place. Everyone in Victorian London knows this place, even if they never admit to visiting. You push open the door and step inside. This is a gentleman's club, but not the raucous kind full of cigars and snoring retirees. No, this is the Midnight Chamber, a private club for those whose minds don't settle when the clocks do. The air is warm, the light dim, and the walls lined with books and portraits of other night wanderers who presumably never slept either. You're greeted not with questions, but with a nod and a glass of something amber. The server whispers, "Midnight toast. Sherry and warm spices. No stimulants, we promise." You find a seat near the fire, flanked by a globe and a grandfather clock that ticks so softly it feels like it's doing you a favor. Around you, men in dressing gowns and velvet slippers murmur to one another in voices barely louder than breath. They speak of dreams they almost had, of books they've read 5 times and still don't understand, of how the moon looked in August of '57. One gentleman leans over and says, "I tried sleeping in a hammock once, like Darwin. Said it helped with digestion. All I got was vertigo and a bruised ego." Victorians were endlessly curious about positioning and posture when it came to sleep. Upright chairs, tilted beds, hammocks, floor mats, even standing naps against padded walls. One pamphlet you remember reading claimed that lying on your left side invited melancholy, while the right side encouraged entrepreneurial dreams. Historians still debate whether this was medical theory or moral panic. Probably both. A steward approaches with a tray of toast slices. Not just any toast. This is sleep toast. Each triangle is carefully buttered and lightly sprinkled with various toppings. Lavender sugar, cinnamon, a dusting of nutmeg. One slice even has a dollop of plum jam enhanced with something he only calls night cordial. You choose the cinnamon. It's warm and crumbly and tastes like an autumn memory. Across from you, a man in wire spectacles is recounting a theory. Insomnia, he says, is just intelligence refusing to nap. Another offers a counterpoint. Nonsense. It's digestion. Always digestion. The stomach is the true tyrant. A third nods slowly and adds, my mother used to hang socks filled with rosemary at the headboard. Worked like a charm. Or maybe it was just the scent of laundry that made me feel safe. You sip your sherry and consider the scent of laundry. You decide they might all be right. In the corner, a pianist begins to play something soft and circular. Not a melody exactly, more like atmosphere. You lean into it. The notes wrap around you like a velvet shawl. Another toast is raised. To the noble pursuit of rest, however awkward the chase. The glasses clink. You raise yours, too. Then someone starts reading aloud from a small leather-bound volume. It's a passage from the Book of Drowsy Habits, apparently a club favorite. The line goes, when the body cannot rest, let the mind pretend. The body will follow, eventually. It always does. You believe that. Or at least you want to. By now, your limbs feel soaked in warmth. Not tired exactly, just marinated in ease. Your legs are crossed, but you can't remember when they folded. Your glass is empty, but you didn't notice drinking. The fire crackles. The clock ticks. And the conversation, still gently circling, now sounds like a lullaby of distant thoughts. You stand slowly, place your glass on the side table, and nod a silent farewell to the gentleman still musing in half-formed sentences. Outside, the cold brushes your cheeks. But it's not shocking. It's bracing, like the deep breath before a final exhale. You walk on. You pass a man in a doorway pouring warm milk into a saucer for a cat. He doesn't look at you, but says quietly, don't fight it too hard. Sleep's just shy sometimes. You nod, though you're not sure he's speaking to you, or the cat, or the night itself. The road opens into a square where the gas lamps glow a little lower, and the shadows huddle more tightly. You find a bench beneath an iron lamppost that leans ever so slightly, as though bowing toward sleep too. You sit, stretch your legs, and close your eyes for a moment. Just a moment. And as your breath steadies, you think, if sleep arrives, it won't be loud. It won't be dramatic. It will come like a final toast at the end of a quiet gathering, unexpected but welcome, and maybe already here. Your eyes flutter open, barely. A soft wind stirs the curls of your hair and rustles something overhead. Leaves, perhaps, or a bit of linen left on a line. You don't remember falling asleep. Not exactly, but you definitely weren't awake either. The fog has returned, gentler this time. Like it, too, has grown sleepy. You rise from the bench and stretch your arms. Every movement feels like it has a little more gravity now. Your body is caught in that delicious middle state, the one between waking and dreaming where thoughts drift but don't stick. You shuffle on, pulled by the glow of a shop window, just ahead. It's a mattress seller. The sign says, Somnium and Sons, beds for every burden. And just below that, painted in dainty script, because some thoughts need fluffing too. Inside, the shop is arranged more like a museum than a furniture store. Beds from different decades and social classes stand on quiet display like sleeping statues. You pass a hay-stuffed ticking mattress marked Rural Dreams, 1802, and a delicate brass bed frame labeled for ladies with soft spines. A kindly woman in a checked waistcoat greets you and offers to demonstrate a few options. Sleep, she says, is all about the surface. The mind can be a maze, but the body needs only one thing, somewhere soft surrender. She shows you a sample labeled the Chancellor. It's so firm it might be carved from oak. Some people sleep better when they're reminded of responsibility, she says without irony. You lie down. It's like napping on a philosophy textbook. You try not to grimace. Next is a sea drift, stuffed with wool and gently cradling. It smells faintly of salt. The mattress claims to contain dried seaweed harvested by moonlight, which is either poetic marketing or just seaweed. You sink in. Better. Another customer nearby tests the feathered democracy, which boasts layers of imported goose down. He sighs as he lies back and murmurs, like being disagreed with very politely. Victorians were highly opinionated about bed filling. Feathers were ideal for softness, but too much led to overheating and faint dreams. Horsehair was firm and long-lasting, but some claimed it made sleep too alert. Good for colonels, bad for poets. Then there was moss stuffing, favored by the particularly earthy or eccentric. Historians still debate whether aristocratic moss was an actual material or just a marketing ploy. Either way, it rarely held up past the third wash. The shopkeeper invites you to test one more, the composure model. You lie back into it and immediately feel held, not cradled, not sunk, just supported. Like the mattress isn't trying to fix you. It's just letting you be. You close your eyes. For a moment, the shop falls away. All you hear is your breath. All you feel is a quiet hum beneath your ribs. No thoughts about yesterday. No concerns about tomorrow. Just stillness. When you open your eyes again, the shopkeeper smiles softly. That one's popular with night thinkers, she says. And people who sleep like foxes, always alert, even when curled. You thank her and step outside again. The fog has thickened. Or maybe you've just grown drowsier. You're not sure anymore which way the world is turning. You pass a tailor's shop next, closed, but still lit within. In the window is a nightgown draped over a velvet chaise with a tag that reads, "Weighted seams for peace." Even clothing, it seems, has joined the Victorian sleep crusade. And then, just beyond the tailor, you see it. A narrow doorway under a wooden arch, glowing softly with candlelight. No sign, no display, but the smell, linen, rosemary, and a faint trace of lavender wax, pulls you in like a lullaby sung by someone you trust. Inside, it's a simple room with 6 beds lined up along the wall. Not for sale, not for show, just there. A small brass placard reads, "The Napping Library." A quiet attendant greets you, finger pressed to her lips. She hands you a small card. You may lie down. You may rest. No one will ask if you sleep. This is a place for almosts, for near dreams, for liminal thoughts. You lie on the last bed by the window. The blanket is light, the pillow just enough. Someone has left a book on the nightstand, open to a poem. You don't read it, but your fingers rest on the page. You stare at the ceiling. It is plain, honest, no gilded dreams or medicinal clouds. Just plaster and shadow and the slow flicker of candlelight. And you breathe. And you don't think. And you don't try. You just stay. Maybe sleep comes. Maybe it doesn't. But for now, this bed is enough. The napping library fades behind you, though a piece of it seems to cling to your skin, like the scent of lavender or the trace of a dream you're already starting to forget. You walk now through the city's quieter bones. No carts clatter here. No late-night revelers. Only fog and the sound of your own softened footsteps. The buildings are different in this quarter. Low-slung and plain, their purpose harder to guess. Ahead, you spot something curious. A circular stone sign that reads, "The Soothing Mechanics Society, ST 1849. You knock. The door opens with a long creak that seems to apologize as it echoes. Inside is a workshop, but not the loud kind. No hammering, no shouting, just quiet shuffling, the whir of small wheels, and a faint music box melody playing from somewhere in the rafters. A woman in wire-rimmed spectacles welcomes you with a nod. Insomnia is not always a mind problem, she says. Sometimes the body just needs reminding. She gestures to a wide room filled with what appear to be machines designed not to wake people, but to rock them gently back into dreams. You're guided past softly whirring devices with polished gears and padded levers. One machine is called the Gentle Persuader. It looks like a rocking chair married a metronome. Another, the cradle for grown men, resembles a baby's bassinet enlarged awkwardly to accommodate full-sized, fully grown, fully sleepless adults. You try not to laugh, but the woman nods solemnly. It's based on naval hammock theory. The body remembers the sway of ships, even if the mind never set sail. She offers to let you try it. The cradle has smooth wooden sides, a thick mattress, and two quiet footmen who begin to push it, ever so slightly. Back and forth, back and forth. It feels absurd. Then it feels nostalgic. Then it feels inevitable. Victorians were fascinated by motion as medicine. Swinging chairs, vibrating couches, pulse-regulated hammocks. Some believe that steady rocking realigned the nervous system. Others argued it mimicked the safety of the womb. One, particularly daring doctor, even proposed attaching beds to metronomes to achieve what he called sympathetic neural obedience. Historians still argue whether these techniques were rooted in science or sentimentality. But what's certain is this: many desperate Londoners tried them, and some swore by the results. You lie in the cradle a bit longer. The wooden joints creak in a rhythm that almost sounds like breathing. A music box nearby plays something faint and lilting. You don't recognize the tune, but your eyelids flutter just once, and for a moment you feel like you might drift. Then a soft clunk signals the end of your turn, and the cradle eases to a stop. You step out lighter now. Float sure. Your knees feel pleasantly disobedient, as if they're no longer entirely convinced of your vertical intentions. The woman shows you another prototype, the Bedwobble 3000. You decline. The name alone is too energetic. As you exit the building, you pass a chalkboard where clients have written short testimonials. Didn't sleep, but definitely forgot why I was angry. I dreamed of the sea. I have never seen the sea. No side effect except moderate peace. Back on the street, the silence has grown friendlier. The fog curls around street lamps like ribbon, and somewhere in the distance, a cat yowls once before thinking better of it. You walk past a canal boat moored in a narrow inlet. A sign hangs from the side. Insomnia cruises. Rocking services available by appointment. You wonder if it's real or a joke. Then you hear snoring from inside, and decide it's both. Further along, a man leans against a lamppost with a clipboard, offering trials for something called a human cocoon. You wave him off, only slightly tempted by the words feather lining. You're moving slower now. Not from weariness, but from softness. The world feels feathered at the edges. Sounds muffle themselves out of courtesy. Even your thoughts begin to tiptoe. You pass a baker's shop, where the windows glow with early morning warmth. Inside, loaves are being shaped, and someone hums off-key to themselves. The smell of rising dough nearly knocks you over with comfort. A delivery boy offers you a crust of bread warm from the oven. You accept. It tastes like forgiveness and drowsy kindness. As you chew, your gaze drifts across the square. In the window of a nearby home, you spot a cradle swinging in perfect sync with the breeze. A baby sleeps there, tiny hands curled. No fuss, no struggle, just trust. You take another bite of bread and wonder what it would be like to return to a time when sleep came without effort, when someone else rocked you, and your only job was to accept the motion. Tonight, you've been cradled by machines, warmed by strangers, and toasted by gentlemen who turned sleeplessness into poetry. And still you walk, but not far now. You know the end of this road is near. You can feel it in your bones, the ones that creak in time with the cradle, the ones that now hum, faintly, with rest. The road narrows again, curving gently through a cluster of houses that seem to have nodded off themselves. Shutters drawn. Chimneys exhaling slow streams of smoke. Front doors slightly ajar as if to welcome dreams wandering home late. You drift with it, your boots brushing against cobblestone slick with dew. A faint rhythm grows louder with each step. Not music exactly, but footsteps. Deliberate, purposeful. You follow the sound until you see them. A small procession of figures, bundled in shawls, coats, and scarves, walking silently along the edge of the street. No one speaks. No one rushes. This is the Moonlight Walking Society, and you've stumbled upon one of their nightly rambles. You fall into step behind them, and no one questions it. Their pace is steady and slow, more like a meander than a march. Their leader, a wiry woman with a thick braid coiled at her nape, carries a lantern that sways with the rhythm of her stride. The lantern is painted blue and etched with the word, peace. Victorians often believed that the body craved movement before rest. The act of walking was seen as a physical lullaby, low impact, mildly hypnotic, and politely exhausting. Some doctors prescribed night walks as a natural sedative, encouraging patients to gently walk out their worries. The Moonlight Walking Society meets nightly in various boroughs, and their mission is simple: to soothe the sleepless one footstep at a time. Their only rule? No speaking unless spoken to by the moon. You pass shuttered shops and curling vines, street cats and empty carriages. The buildings fade into hedges, the hedges into trees, until suddenly you find yourself in the soft belly of a park. Gaslights line the path like sleepy sentinels. Here, in the cradle of London's gardens, even the breeze seems to hush itself. One of the walkers passes you a small cloth bundle. Inside, a square of dark chocolate, infused with mint and something peppery. It steadies the tongue, she whispers, and then returns to her silence. A man behind you begins humming, not loudly, not tunefully, but steadily. His breath makes a melody of sorts, something between a lullaby and a sea shanty, remembered poorly. As you continue on, the trees gather thick around the path, turning the gaslight into patches of soft gold and shadow. The air smells of damp earth and early blossom, and your boots make little scuffs in the gravel that seem to blend perfectly with the quiet. Historians still debate whether the Victorians' affinity for night walking was based in medicine or just a deep, poetic stubbornness. After all, when every book, every bottle, and every bed fails you, a walk on the stars feels like the last honest attempt. You exit the park through a tall iron gate and find yourself in an older part of the city, where buildings lean closer together and the streets narrow into almost alleyways. Here, the walkers begin to peel off one by one, slipping silently into homes, up staircases, through back doors. At the corner, a man turns and salutes the group with his walking stick. "One more hour toward dawn," he says, before disappearing down a crooked lane. You pause at a small square with a dry fountain in the center. At its base, someone has chalked a message: if you cannot sleep, walk until your worries forget their way home. You sit on the edge of the fountain, watching as the last of the walkers vanishes into the fog. Above you, the moon finally emerges, pale and wide like a dropped saucer in the sky. You look up and whisper, just for yourself, "Almost." And then, as if summoned by the admission, you hear footsteps again, this time lighter, quicker. A group of teenagers appears from the far corner of the square, all giggles and shushing and the jangle of keys. They're night walkers, too, in their own way, not part of any formal society, but part of the same long tradition, the wide awake, the almost rested, the seekers of that quiet moment when the world forgets to press. They pass without noticing you, and then they're gone. You remain, your body stilled, your thoughts slowed to a gentle crawl. You stretch your feet in front of you. You flex your fingers. The stone beneath you is cool, but solid, real, and in that grounded stillness, something begins to shift. You breathe in, slow, deep, deliberate, and you feel it. That maybe has turned into a closer, not yet a full yes, but no longer resistance. Sleep isn't knocking at the door, but it has stepped onto the path leading to it. You rise. The city has grown thinner around you, its noise tucked away, its thoughts put down for the night. And in this liminal stretch between movement and rest, you let yourself believe something simple. If you keep walking gently, if you keep breathing evenly, if you keep listening softly, sleep may decide to join you after all. You're back in the winding streets now, but they feel quieter, deeper somehow, as if the city itself is dreaming, and you're just walking through its gentle exhale. The lanterns still glow, but more faintly, like they're conserving their last flickers before dawn. You've nearly forgotten what urgency feels like. As you pass a corner bakery, shutters still drawn, you spot a curious figure crouched beside a wooden cart. He wears a white apron frayed and flour-stained, and he's fiddling with a small brass object. You watch from a distance before he notices you and waves you over with a soft laugh. "Could use another pair of hands," he murmurs. You kneel beside him. The brass thing is a kind of lantern, but not quite. "Traveling vapor bed," he explains proudly. "Patent pending." You raise an eyebrow. He chuckles. "It's for export." We're sending sleep to the colonies now. You look closer. It's a miniature contraption that produces warmth, releases scented steam, and emits a low chime when the temperature is just right. Perfect for tents, ships, even the desert, he says. If they can send tea and corsets across the world, why not rest? Victorian Britain, you recall, was tireless in exporting not just goods, but lifestyles. And sleep, oddly enough, became part of that imperial package. British doctors stationed abroad wrote lengthy letters about adapting rest cures for unfamiliar climates. Warm milk in India became chilled cinnamon milk. Lavender gave way to clove, and woolen blankets were traded for thin linen wraps. One doctor in Calcutta wrote that cool feet and warm breath were the keys to sleep, regardless of continent. Another in Cape Town insisted that a tight wrap of turmeric soaked cloth calmed the liver and the mind. Historians still debate whether these sleep missions were acts of sincere care or just the empire's habit of inserting itself into every private routine. But the result was the same. The Victorians brought their sleep worries wherever they went, armed with linen eye masks, sachets, and peppermint foot rubs. The baker, if that's really what he is, offers you a folded leaflet. It's stained with oil and smells faintly of nutmeg. Rest practices abroad. Cairo, night breezes and cardamom sugar stones. Singapore, bamboo mats and foot cooling stations. Sydney, sea air rooms and saltwater gargles. And for all places, silence, dark cloth, and the absence of roosters. He winks. Universals. You rise and tuck the leaflet into your coat. Further along, you pass a house where the windows are flung open, and through them you see a woman slowly massaging her scalp with a wooden comb. Her hands move rhythmically, her face tilted toward a ceiling you cannot see. This, too, you suspect, is a ritual exported from someone else's grandmother, brought into the heart of London, translated, adapted, and made quietly sacred. In another window, a man is soaking his feet in a bowl of warm water, while his wife reads aloud from a weathered novel. The rhythm of her voice is slow and soothing. You can't make out the words, but it doesn't matter. It's not the story that calms. It's the sound. Everywhere now you notice it. Little borrowed gestures. Practices from other lands, whispered from port to port. Doctor to doctor, midwife to patient. A turmeric wrap. A mint leaf under the tongue. A folded cloth soaked in vinegar and rose water. Each one offered with the same quiet hope. Maybe this will help. You walk until the buildings begin to change again. Less formal now. Simpler. The corners are rounder. The roof's lower. You pass a wooden fence, behind which laundry sways gently in the breeze. Some of it is night clothes. Still damp. Still waiting. There's a sound ahead. Slow, regular, human. Snoring. You turn the corner and find yourself beside a long porch where 6 hammocks have been strung in careful alignment. Some are occupied. All are swaying. It's unclear if this is a hostel, a family home, or a nap experiment gone right. A hand emerges from one of the hammocks and offers you a cup. It's warm, cinnamon-laced, and surprisingly creamy. You sip. The person doesn't speak. Just hums a low, contented tune. You stay for a while, just sitting on the stoop, breathing in the scent of sleep in progress. It's easy to envy the ones in the hammocks, how gently they sway, how light they look, but it's a soft envy, the kind that comes with understanding. They're not asleep because they found a better potion or a smarter position or the perfect blend of herbs. They're asleep because eventually the body says enough. You set down your cup. You rise. You take a final turn down a quiet lane, and the city seems to fold behind you, a book gently closing its cover. You're nearly there. The lane before you narrows into something barely more than a corridor between buildings, flanked by ivy-covered walls and the distant hiss of bread ovens in the earliest stirrings of morning. A pale light has started to gather, not the confident blaze of day, but the first tentative blue of dawn curling over rooftops. You pass under a low arch where a weathered plaque reads, Baker's Passage, for those who rise early or sleep late. It feels like the right place. And then you see it. A narrow staircase leads up to a door wedged between 2 shops, one for copper kettles, the other for lace doilies. A single flickering candle sits in the window above. No sign, no name, but you know it. You climb. At the top, The door creaks open before you knock. A woman, still in her dressing gown, gestures wordlessly for you to come in. You cross the threshold and into the hush of a space that feels remembered, small but full of comfort, the kind that requires no explanation. She doesn't speak, just points to a tiny bed tucked under a window. The mattress is lumpy, the blanket mismatched, the pillow modest. But there's something in the air, the scent of fresh bread, of cooled wax, and just a trace of laudanum baked into the floorboards from years past. You remove your coat and shoes. The bed creaks as you climb in, and for a moment, you're aware of every sound, every tick of the distant street lamp, every sigh of the city relaxing its spine. She places something beside you on the nightstand, a warm roll wrapped in paper. Not because you asked, just because. Then gently, she closes the door. You lie still. The blanket is just the right weight. The pillow knows the shape of your skull in a way that feels almost personal. The window lets in a whisper breeze. Nothing speaks, not even your thoughts. And now, after a long journey of herbal concoctions and vibrating cradles, walking societies and mesmeric parlors, there is nothing more to try. No more tinctures. No more advice. You reach the simplest of sleep prescriptions. A small room, a narrow bed, and a city that finally stops talking. Historians still argue whether sleeplessness in Victorian London was ever truly cured, or simply endured. But here now, in this space made of hush and habit and slowly cooling bricks, the answer doesn't matter. Your eyelids grow heavier, not with effort, but with surrender, the kind that doesn't need to be convinced anymore. You think about the milkman, the herbalist, the cradle, the sherry toast. You think of the humming walkers, the rocking hammocks, the scholar who recited poems to the fire. And then you think of nothing at all. The city exhales. So, do you? The candle on the sill guttered, the footsteps in the street gone, the bread beside you, still warm. Sleep doesn't knock. It simply arrives. Now everything is still. The world beyond your eyelids fades into softness. The street corners, the brass bells, the slippered host with warm tea and warmer smiles. They're still there in the fog, but farther now, slower. Even your thoughts have grown heavy, drowsy, willing to wait. Let them. Let your breath stretch a little longer with each inhale. Let your arms rest exactly where they've fallen. Let your legs sink into the mattress beneath you like roots into deep, cool earth. There is no more story left to follow. No more cures to test. No more corners to turn. Only this moment. This breath. This quiet. Perhaps you remember the sway of a cradle, or the hush of walking in fog, or the warmth of cinnamon toast pressed into your hand by someone who didn't ask your name, but knew exactly what you needed. Maybe those things are still with you, wrapped gently around your chest like the blanket, now rising and falling with your breath. Or maybe they've already dissolved into dream. Wherever you are, however long you've been searching, there's nothing left to do. You've arrived. The lamps are out. The doors are closed. And the night, at last, is yours. Sleep well.